Young people have dreams and hopes for their future, and every parent can agree that what they want for their children is to be future ready, to have the skills and opportunities they will need to succeed in the future. Yet innovation is transforming the way we work and bringing into question how educators and schools can best prepare students given the uncertain future of work. The world of work is rapidly changing, and most of the jobs that will exist in 20 years haven't even been created yet. It's impossible to know the science and technological skills students will need to succeed in the future. Also, a point on entrepreneurship. There is a growing interest among youth, and it requires a different set of skills. What we know, including from business leaders and employers, is that to succeed in the future, students will need skills to set and achieve goals, skills to manage emotions in the face of uncertainty and challenge, skills to identify and build relationships with good mentors who can help them succeed when work changes, skills to understand the needs of others, including supervisors, clients, and customers, and to show respect for others from different backgrounds, skills to communicate and collaborate with others from diverse backgrounds and fields. All of these competencies are what social and emotional learning is designed to teach. The most universal employability skills are interpersonal ones: communication, self-awareness, personal management, and being able to work with and get along with others. These are the same skills taught in quality SEL lessons and programs. In fact, employers say they can teach new hires relevant science and technology, but what they can't teach and often struggle to find are the foundational skills, that social and emotional skills students will need for success. I am excited to introduce our new 5-part webisode series on this topic. In 2020, CASEL launched an initiative to strategically integrate social and emotional learning with career and workforce development. In partnership with 8 states, Delaware, Kansas, Nevada, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Utah, and Wisconsin, and the generous support of Pure Edge, Inc., we are identifying and elevating policies to address inequities in youth employment and engage in an economic revival.
When I had the privilege of serving on the National Commission for Social, Emotional, and Academic Learning, we heard early on from the science community that human beings have a social gate to learning, that by improving our social and emotional skills, we make greater gains in academics. In fact, I've said that social and emotional learning is a booster rocket to everything we already measure, from course performance to attendance, better behavior, to increased graduation rates, post-secondary attainment, and attachment to the workforce. You know, a generation ago, if you were to ask employers what they were looking for in workers, you'd hear some version of the 3 R's: reading skills, writing skills, arithmetic. Today, of course, you hear things like discipline and grit, showing up for work on time, problem solving, an ability to work in teams, to get along well with others, good listening skills, empathy. Our children are our nation's greatest asset, and they are worth investing in every way we can, socially, emotionally, academically. Our future depends on it.
I am truly looking forward to hearing about the national efforts and partnerships our esteemed panelists will share to integrate social and emotional learning with career and workforce development to ensure all students are future ready. Let's start by introducing our panelists. Matthew Atwell is a senior researcher for Civic. Matthew Atwell has been a member of the Civic team since 2015. As a senior researcher, he conducts data analysis and research on a diverse set of policy areas that are focused merely on the opportunity gap. He has co-authored numerous nationally syndicated reports exploring education, civic health, and economic mobility. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning.
Next, we have Dr. Dana Godek, who's a senior policy and research manager at CASEL. Dr. Godek has joined the CASEL Collaborating States Initiative in 2020 and is a senior policy and research manager with a focus on social and emotional learning and career and workforce development. She is also an expert on federal policy, particularly federal funding and coordinated spending policy. Good morning, Dr. Godek.
Honored to join you, Dr. White.
It's a pleasure. Let's jump into some questions and really get the dialogue going. Why was this important to do now? Matthew, if you don't mind, I would like to start with our first question to you. When we think about these concepts of developing a shared vision of student success, how can states really begin to start to organize this work, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's important to do now for two main reasons. The first is the future of work is changing more rapidly than it ever has before. It's completely resetting workforce expectations. Research estimates that 2/3 of today's 5-year-olds are going to find themselves in jobs that don't yet exist, and current workers are expected to change jobs at 20 times higher rates than previous generations. These trends really make it impossible to predict the exact technical skills youth will need to be successful in the future, and raises important questions about how we prepare youth for success beyond high school. The second reason it was important to do this now is there's this growing understanding in the field of education that we must adapt to really meet the broader needs of students. Over the past 2 decades, evidence has made it clear that education is about much more than traditional academic subjects like learning math, science, English. Those things are still really important, but we know now that social emotional skills are imperative for youth success, and they are teachable in school. With this comes the need to broaden our collective definition of student success and future readiness, like you said. When asked what they want for their children in nationally representative surveys, parents prioritize developing good character and integrity and finding happiness over attending college or finding a career. In addition, schools need to provide youth with more opportunities to apply their classroom learning through real-world experiences. At the same time, there's this recognition that high school has over-prioritized 4-year degrees, and that youth must be presented with a wider range of future pathways that include 2-year degrees, they include high-quality credentials that set them up for a growing number of middle skill jobs. As part of this, throughout their K through 12 education, they need exposure to diverse career options that help develop their occupational identity to find the calling that not only provides a life-sustaining wage, but instills them with passion and purpose. Going back to that broader vision of success, I think an underreported aspect of the Great Resignation and future of work is that young people are, more than previous generations, yearning for jobs that provide them fulfillment beyond just salary, and they'll leave their jobs to do that. We started with a review of employer surveys and job listings to find the skills employers are looking for. In 2020, we released that research brief on our findings that in many ways confirmed what we already knew. SEL skills are evergreen. While technical skills shift across jobs and industries, youth will always need to have the self-awareness to be flexible, to come to work with a positive attitude, self-management skills to set and meet deadlines and goals, the social awareness and relationship skills to build relationships with mentors, work well with supervisors and peers from diverse backgrounds, to understand the needs of others and to communicate effectively, and the responsible decision-making skills to analyze and solve complex problems. At the same time, CASEL launched the SEL Workforce Community of Practice to work with states to integrate SEL and career and workforce development in 2020. And in just 2 years, we've learned a great deal and have seen tremendous progress in the participating states, including the great work Dr. White has helped to shepherd in Delaware. From there, we undertook a robust literature and landscape review of emerging research, particularly SEL, career and workforce development, and the science of learning and development. And this led to 5 policy domains that we see ripe for integration with career and workforce development. The first being to develop a shared vision of success. The second, finding adult capacity to provide productive instructional strategies. The third, students need safe and supportive learning environments. The fourth, students need opportunities for customized learning. And the fifth, students need flexible, future-ready pathways that provide multiple on and on ramps so students have the ability to change their mind if need be.
I just want to underscore a couple of comments that my colleague Matt Atwell made. And Matt, it's such a pleasure to be linked up with you. I feel like I always sort of get to skew upward when I get to work with you on any project, not the least of which is the report that you referenced in 2020, where we analyzed employers' skill sets that they were seeking and align that to social emotional learning skills. I would also be remiss if I didn't pick up on your comments about the Great Resignation, right? Like, so exacerbating the Great Resignation is what the Surgeon General has labeled the youth mental health crisis, right? It's playing out at home, it's playing out in schools, and it's certainly playing out to some degree in workplaces, referencing the Great Resignation and then potential reluctance to enter into the workplace. So really to support youth and this emerging workforce, policymakers are in a crossroads, right? They are compelled to innovate on their approaches. And they're heeding this call, right? They're adapting traditional models, whether it be in school time, through SEL integrated instruction, or out of school time through SEL informed enrichment, or in work-based learning experiences where employability skills are in direct alignment with social emotional skills and competencies. I mean, there's nearly a one-to-one matchup of what employers have reported in the last 10 years. And it's now peaked now more than ever in the wake of the public health crisis and social construct shifts. So related to that, and then I'm happy to return the floor back. One of my favorite recent quotes comes from a CASEL Collaborating States Initiative advisor, Stephanie Krause, who recently was quoted, and I'm going to get this wrong, but saying basically she's reflected that there is a significant alignment between youth that are hired on their hard skills, right, like their technical skills, but then regrettably they're fired on their more human skills, right, their social emotional learning skills. So hired for technical, fired for a lack of SEL. And she's right. And we have to learn and relearn our approaches to school-wide culture, to family support, to community engagement and civic life, to include work life. We believe, CASEL believes, that this roadmap in collaboration with Civic offers us a flashlight to help lead us through sort of this dark room in our society and our lives toward a brighter path into the world of work that really illuminates some very specific policy recommendations for states, districts, and others to consider as we really are weaving together integrated supports that include social emotional learning and career and workforce development.
Matt, thank you. Dana, thank you for providing such a terrific foundation for our conversation today. So many areas that I would like to touch on. Matt, specifically, I really like how you called out the roadmap and how we can really help states to integrate that social and emotional learning with the career and workforce development. And then also, Dana, a point that really stuck out to me was that we see that our young people have technical skills, but that the human skills or these social and emotional skills, there's a gap there. When we think about what the future looks like, and I guess I would distill that down to a vision statement. What kind of vision statements have we seen states developing in your work? Matt or Dana, please feel free to lead the question.
Sure, I'm happy to kick it off this time if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So obviously having a vision or a North Star to direct and guide the work of any collaborative working group is an essential step one. In 2017, CASEL, in partnership with the American Institute of Research, released a process tool that this is one of the most essential components, foundational components of policy formation. But I'd also like to point out that the roadmap that we're discussing compels us to develop a very clear vision statement. So folks, across different agencies, breaking down silos, have a common nexus point to join to. And we all know that career and workforce development is well known as a nonpartisan strategy, right? We all want to prepare youth for post-secondary success. One of our founders, Dr. Roger Weisberg, used to reflect that all parents want is for their children to be successful in their life after formal K-12 school. CASEL has adopted this term as well, applying a maybe more focused definition that this term means career and workforce development, right? So this broader definition, we distill it down to career and workforce development to capture the diversity of approaches and efforts employed by states for which we are collaborating with. And I'll just give a shout out to three of them really quickly. Nevada did incredible early work with their chief state school officer in leading their initial coalition to develop a vision statement. Ohio has contextualized this in their whole child framework efforts, which connects to their state education agency strategic plan. And Delaware, your home state, Dr. White, did a very collaborative process with statewide community-based organizations, grassroots voices from the field to include youth, not in a perfunctory way, but really included and elevated the voices of youth and made them integral to the process, and arrived at this great vision statement, which is we are empowering every student to achieve purpose, place, and plans for the future. And I love how that's inclusive of each and every child.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dana. And I just love conceptually how we are consistently keeping youth in the center of the room. And oftentimes when we think about these collaborative efforts, capacity is something that we consistently come back to. When we think about building adult capacity to really provide these instructional strategies, and Matt, this question is for you. What are leverage points for shared adult capacity when building across teams?
Yeah, as you say, Dr. White, it is so important that all adults supporting students are knowledgeable and have that capacity to really be able to work with students. And that includes being knowledgeable of the career and workforce pathways and the important role that SEL plays in positive youth development. This can happen through ongoing professional development of educators, as well as guidance passed down from the state. For example, some states have SEL and career and workforce professional learning opportunities that are being co-constructed to provide educators with academic skills, technical skills, and concepts to bolster SEL practices. For students to develop SEL and workforce competencies, educators must exemplify what those behaviors look like. To achieve this, states can incentivize the redesign of educator preparation and in-service programs or other adult supports that align with the most recent science, learning, and development and are culturally sustaining and affirming. Some leverage points there can include developing micro-credentials for teaching and integrating SEL and career and workforce development.
Sure.
Yeah, love that. I want to pick up on the micro-credentialing piece. But first, I would be wrong if I wasn't reminded that the state theory of action from CASEL CSI includes a pretty significant connection to career and workforce development with some specifics on engaging adult capacity and building up those skills and strengths across systems. But to connect to Matt's point on micro-credentialing, Mark Greenberg, one of CASEL's founders and board member emeritus, has done extensive research in this space. And he reminds me that mentoring and induction programs for beginning teachers are really significant. Research shows that a subject area mentor, whether it be from career and workforce development space, a social emotional learning space, or one of the what we call core four, in a connection mentoring relationship can really build up on some of these skills and norm these skills for a newly emerging educator. And social emotional learning programs, of course, at their heart are about improving behavior for students, but also ensuring that teachers experience less stress. And when people are less stressed, they are more freed and open up to do things like conceive of innovative practices like the ones that are referenced within this roadmap report.
Matt, I want to go back to something that you said in your reply to frame the development of my next question. You talked about the importance when working with young people to build culturally sustaining and affirming environments. And I could not agree with you more in terms of really building safe and supportive learning environments for young people. And we understand that that is also taking on a whole new meaning now in the space that we've now entered into. So my question to you, Matt and Dana, I will also follow up with this question for you as well. How can we honor equity in student-led decisions that make the most of social emotional competencies as well as skill sets?
Yeah, it's a really good and difficult question. Fostering safe and supportive learning environments, the research shows how important it is. It's linked to a host of positive outcomes, including academic outcomes like higher grades, test scores, student engagement, but also long-term outcomes like reducing the impacts of poverty. I think the idea of really emphasizing equity in these conversations is so important. And I think part of it comes from states should be thinking about how they can promote positive relationships in schools so that students feel comfortable sharing with the adults in the room. I think part of that stems from almost the last question of building adult capacity, but also having diverse teachers and educators in there so that students see themselves in the adults in the building with them, that it's not just like being taught by people who maybe have different backgrounds from them.
Sure.
As part of this work, it's important to ensure that learning environments are really inclusive. Unfortunately, the data shows that historically marginalized students are participating in high quality and CTE courses less often. So states really need to kind of be working to do equity audits to see why that is happening. Why aren't Black and Brown students participating in CTE courses at the same rates? Why don't they have access to AP courses and high quality math and science courses that are most predictive for success after school? So to honor equity, I think states really need to look in the mirror in some ways to be able to do this. And states like Rhode Island have done an excellent job of going through and figuring out where those gaps are to ensure that everyone has the same opportunity to take those courses that are so predictive for success beyond high school.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for specifically calling out equity and also for providing us with an opportunity to look further into Rhode Island's work. Dana, can I pose the same question to you? How can we honor equity in student-led decisions that make the most of social emotional competencies and also skill sets?
Such a great question and an important and timely question. I want to connect to something that Matt offered, which is really this encouragement around states thinking about culturally responsive policies that are in support of their communities. Look, nobody understands the families and voices of communities more than the community itself. So we believe that states understand that and understand how to honor constituents and the populace for which they are governed to serve and support. From CASEL's vantage point, obviously we want to promote policies that are in service of each and every child, and that includes social emotional learning in service of equity. But we believe that that service starts with families, period, right? CASEL's learning agenda continues to be focused on elevating the voices of parents and caregivers. We have a long, rich tradition in that, and bringing families and schools together around the shared vision for SEL, and now expanding that to a shared vision for SEL integrated with career and workforce development. I'm reminded of something that our president and CEO, Dr. Samuel, was quoted saying recently, which is really prioritizing the engagement of students, families, and community organizations in the decision-making process, right? So including them to serve on state level advisory boards, state level SEL, and even workforce investment boards to get really authentic shared decision-making. We are all about that. And to promote that, we want to encourage states and other policymakers to think about providing resources for professional learning opportunities that help states and districts prioritize staff that are making inroads in that process, but also prioritize those authentic student and family relationships in support of the integration of these activities.
Absolutely. Dana, thank you. Thank you for, at the outset of your answer, really calling out that no one understands states and communities better than the communities themselves. And I can attest to the great work being led in Delaware in terms of ensuring that community-based organizations were a part of that community of practice, as we really focus on keeping youth in the center of the room, but also understanding all of the various contexts by which they engage and the roles that those varying contexts can play. So thank you so much. What I would like to do is shift our conversation a bit to talk a little about around cultivating opportunities for customized learning, and really specifically focusing on potentially post-secondary advisement plans. So Matt, this question is for you. What types of learning experiences do these include, and how are these states facilitating new opportunities for customized learning, including the individualized learning plan or student success plan, as it may be called in respective states?
Yeah, I think this is a really great question to come right after
Mhm.
talking about student voice, because one of the things that we see whenever we do nationally representative surveys of youth is the things that they say is why did they make the extraordinary decision to drop out of school? It's not because they can't do the classes, it's because there's a lack of engaging material. They want their education to link to real life events. They want to be able to learn about things that are happening in real time currently and apply their learning to those situations. Research also emphasizes that students learn best and are most motivated when they can connect what they learn in the classroom to topics that are relevant to them in situations where they are challenged to make connections between familiar and new situations, and when they can apply knowledge to tasks and real world situations. This really makes the case for student-centered approaches. This includes project-based learning and experiential learning, and this can take a lot of different forms. The CTE world has advanced for a long time work-based learning as a way for students to gain technical skills, but also apply their social, emotional, and academic skills to work settings. This can also include apprenticeships. Service learning is also a big one. Civic released a report a couple years ago that showed that social, emotional learning and service learning have this beautiful mutually reinforcing relationship where social emotional learning makes students want to give back to their communities more, and service learning teaches students social emotional skills that they need for success later. And there's a lot of ways that states can facilitate this by ensuring that all learning is valued and counted. Most states are already doing this through a variety of ways, allowing students to earn credits through exams, performance-based assessments, participating in non-traditional learning experiences. Some states are also being flexible with what gets counted for credit. For example, if a CTE course satisfies a core academic course, it's allowed to count for each. That frees students up to take other courses in areas that they're more interested in, or maybe pursue a career pathway. Others are giving students credits for extracurricular activities that meet standards, like travel sports, or being involved in drama or theater, accounting for art credits. Promoting these opportunities should not end at the class bell either. Out of school time, including after school and summer learning, are so important and excellent ways to support SEL and career and workforce development, integration, and experiential learning.
Absolutely. Matt, I really appreciated how you focused on aligning young people's talents with the career paths that they may take. And when we talk about that student voice, it's really around proposing, supporting, and really encouraging young people to find their own success. Young people becoming more self-directed, more proactive, and really engaging in goals that they are interested in pursuing in the long term. Dana, I would like to really turn the focus to you, keeping in the same line of this questioning. What are some states that you could point to where student-led decision-making is showing up in individualized learning plans?
Yeah, thank you for that. I have 3 really specific examples, but honestly, I could point to any of the 11 states that were in this community of practice that focused on social emotional learning and career and workforce development. I think I'd also like to point to a 2022 report from CASEL, which is basically offering a foundational developmental progression for this work, for where the rubber sort of meets the road from a student's experience, from very early years all the way up into post-secondary pathway planning in key states like Kansas, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and I'll give some specifics to that. But this developmental framework that really integrates SEL and career and workforce development, or CWD, really is serving as the bedrock, as a primary output to our state community of practice, which started with Delaware and included, of course, Kansas, Nevada, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Utah, Wisconsin, and is rapidly expanding to include additional states. Not the least of which is Kentucky, that's really doing some groundbreaking work in this space, and also Arkansas and beyond, and states that we are scanning and becoming acquainted with, all of whom are really putting students at the center of that focus, right? So freeing up the barriers so that students are informed, families are informed, and they are driving the decision-making process for student success plans, individualized learning plans, MyCAPs, whatever it may be called.
Right.
And really, we saw this start with the state of Pennsylvania, who has social emotional learning standards as embedded within their career and technical ed standards. So the Pennsylvania's career ready standards are SEL standards. They are united as one. And I think maybe that was a bit of the inspiration for some of our future work to include work with Kansas, that in a very direct way at a school district, school, and then classroom level is connecting all of those systems of support and engaging students through SEL informed approaches to navigate and make those pathway elections on their own terms, and then recalibrating around that, as is, of course, the home state for you, Dr. White, of
Yes.
Delaware, who's done that through student success plans in a very concrete, policy situated, legislated point, right, that really engages students at the decision-making point, so that as they're showing up and making these plans, the plans end up being unique to them, and the structure falls in behind the student, not the student is behind the structure. So I'm really honored to be learning from all of these states.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dana. Such incredible information there. And this will be my final question for today, and it'll be for you both. We are really have had an engaging and a terrific conversation about the integration of social and emotional learning with career and workforce development. If I could give you both 30 seconds, what would be your statement to drive home the critical importance of integrating social and emotional learning in career workforce development? Dana, could we start with you? And then Matt, could we round out with you?
Thank you for that. You honor me. There's no better time, right? So we have all seen what the effects of the last couple of years have been. And there is no better time for leaders to emerge and rise to the occasion. We have learned a lot of lessons. We need to share these lessons. We need to share in our common challenges in a collaborative community, so we can continue to innovate on these big ideas that can be discovered and translated into policy levers that make conditions for social emotional learning and career and workforce development work for each and every child.
Wow, Dana, thank you. Thank you so much. Matt?
Yeah, I think what I would say is we ask so much of young people in today's world. We ask them to go to school to get good grades. We tell them that they have to go to college or get some degree afterwards, that they need to be able to work together, and now they need to solve all these global problems that I think we put so much burden on them to say the future is children's. That's great, but we need to arm them with the tools that will allow them to be successful in doing that. And I think that this is a great way to do it. I think that by giving them the social emotional skills that are evergreen, that can go to different careers and follow them as they change their minds or adapt their career pathways, and allowing them to apply those skills to real world problems while still in school can really give them the skills they need to be successful when they leave high school and beyond, and to allow them to be thriving adults.
I could not agree with you more. Thank you both for your closing comments. As I am completely in support of building proactive youth. And as those opportunities present themselves, they are equipped with the skill sets that'll help to drive them from the secondary and then to the post-secondary. And we understand that these things cannot wait until high school. We have to start earlier with the introductions of these competencies and our skill sets so that our young people have the opportunity to make those decisions that'll help them to navigate life in the post-secondary. Thank you both